Hey, what's going on everybody? So in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to add in an active speaker volume indicator into your voice or video calling application. So we've probably all already seen this functionality where inside of a video call, anybody who's talking gets highlighted so everybody knows who that active speaker is. It's very important to add this specifically if somebody maybe turns off their camera. We need to see if they're actually talking. If we're in a voice calling room like what we currently have here, we just have our user profiles or avatars and we can't actually see each other. So it's important to highlight that active speaker. So we're just gonna go ahead and build this out. And this video is actually part of a mini series that we're working on with our voice chat rooms here that we're building out. So if you're not part of that series, it's okay. You can still follow along here. I'll recap some of the code and then we'll add in this functionality. It's actually pretty simple here. So this is the application that we currently have. We just built in basic audio calling. If I enter a room, here is our user and my mic is actually on. Don't worry about this red icon. That right now is not working. So this user is talking. If I add another user, we're about to hear a really ugly echo here. So I'm going to be speaking and then I'll turn that off. So you'll notice that the users were the same. We just have this white border and I want to actually highlight that user. So that's very important to add. We currently don't have this functionality. So we'll go ahead and leave this room. And if you want the source code for this, this is actually linked up in the video description. And in this series, we are actually on number 3. So go ahead and open this up. This will be all the source code to the end of this specific video. And for anybody that wants the written guide, go to guide.md. So this is the written guide. I'm going to follow along with this. And I'll just kind of explain how this is done with Agora. It's actually very simple. So first of all, we need to, I actually opened up the wrong one, sorry, we're on video number 2. So we're gonna go to guide.md and we actually first need to enable a volume indicator. So by default, this is not enabled. So we're gonna go to our client object and we're simply gonna call enable volume indicator. So this is gonna enable it by default. Our volume indicator will now trigger every 2 seconds. So that's when we get that reading. So we first need to enable it. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to add in this RTC.on volume indicator event handler, and we're going to go ahead and respond to this. So this enables a volume indicator, and here is where we can actually go ahead and get those volume readings. So very easy to do. We'll go ahead and go through those volumes, and this is the actual logic that we're going to add. Don't worry about this yet. We'll code this up in a second, but essentially we enable it, and then we have the event listener, and this is the customization for that. So let's go ahead and actually go back into our code and start building this out. So what I'm actually going to do is copy the word volume indicator just because it's hard for me to spell words that are a little bit longer while I'm recording and talking. So we'll actually just go ahead and add this under the handle user left method. So let's go ahead and do let enable or init volume indicator. So we're just going to wrap this into a function. We don't actually need to do this, but I want to make sure that it only gets initialized when we join our room. So whenever we initialize init RTC. So we're going to go ahead and put this into a function. Let's go ahead and wrap it. And right away, I'm going to initialize the volume indicator by firing this off when we join a room. And this method gets triggered when we submit that form or when we click that button. And what we wanted to do here is first enable that volume indicator and then actually respond to certain volume levels. So what we're going to do here is we're going to call the enable volume indicator method on our RTC client. So when we created our client object, we called it RTC client. We set it here and then we called create client. So we're going to access that and then we're actually going to go ahead and trigger it. So it's RTC client dot enable volume indicator. I want to make sure I spelled that right. So I could just jump to the source code real quick and I'll just grab this. It's just one of those words that kind of throws me off while I'm recording and talking. Yeah, it did have a misspell. So enable audio volume indicator. So capital A right there. And that's going to enable it for me. So once I enable it, let's go ahead and actually respond to it. So we're going to go ahead and add in that event listener and we're going to go to our RTC client and we're going to respond to the volume indicator event. So this is going to go ahead and just send volume readings through. We're just going to do volume dash indicator. So on volume indicator, let's go ahead and respond to this. And we're just going to go ahead and get all the volumes on every single reading. So what I'm going to do here is actually just go ahead and do console.log. And let's just take a look at the volumes here. So that's going to be plural. Let's get these volumes and let's just take a look at what this does. So this should fire off every 2 seconds. So that's the default setting, and we're going to customize that. So if I go to my application here, let's go ahead and do inspect element. Let's open up our console, and that's not going to get triggered until we enter a room. And we should see some kind of reading happen every 2 seconds. So there we go, volumes is right there. So let me actually zoom in here. So again, the count is every 2 seconds. I'll refresh it. We'll enter the room and we'll just add in volumes. So we'll wait 1, 2, and then it goes again. So when we look through volumes, this is the volume level for every single user. Right now, we only have one user. It's index 0. We are going to have more users. Those are going to be those volumes. So what we're going to do is just go ahead and iterate through each volume level and actually take a look at that. So back in our code, let's go ahead and go through this volumes array. So again, every single user that speaks every 2 seconds, it will give us an entire array of every user's volume level. So let's actually go ahead and loop through those volumes. So we're going to call volumes.for each, and we're going to loop through all the volumes. So we're just going to go ahead and do volume. We'll make sure to get the volume of the current user. So we're going to iterate through it. And I just want to console out the volume itself. So this is going to be an object. I want to see what this looks like, and then we can actually access these values. So we'll just go ahead and do console.log, and let's get the volume level, and let's get the actual volume itself. So we're going to see the array of volumes and then the volume. So we'll save that. Let's try it one more time. We'll enter the room. Every 2 seconds, we'll see the reading. And here we go. We see the volumes and volume. And if we look at volume itself, we should see an object. Let's see. Oh, I need to console out volume. So that needs to be the object. So one is going to be an array and the other one's going to be the object. We'll enter the room. And let's see. Okay, so the volume level is at 44 right now. I'm talking. Now it's at 80, 68. And if I stop talking, now it's at 40. So we have to kind of read that resting rate. And what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to take out this array, and I want to change the indicator and the speed at which it checks. Right now it's every 2 seconds, and that's a little slow because I can say something in a second or make a sound, drop a phone, and it should pick up those volumes. So I should be able to indicate that, but in 2 seconds, there's too much time in between. So what we're going to do is actually within this volume indicator, let's go ahead and access the Agora RTC class here. And we're going to call this set parameter method here. Like that. Did I spell it right? Parameter. Yeah, okay. I think I spelled it right. Now we're going to see this warning here, especially for using TypeScript. And basically, this is still an internal method. It hasn't been put into our documentation yet. It does work, but you might see a warning at some point. This should go away depending on when you're watching it. But we are able to do that. I just wanted to let you know. So even I'm seeing a warning right now right here. It says it does not exist in the Agora RTC SDK. So it's still going to work. Let's go ahead and continue with it. And with this, I'm just going to copy and paste this next section. It's Agora volume indication interval. And we're going to set that to 200 milliseconds. So right now it's every 2 seconds. We want to set that to 200 or 200 milliseconds. So now if I enter a room, we're going to see this speed go up a lot. So it's really fast. We're seeing it every 200 milliseconds, and that volume level is lingering at around 70 to 90. And what I have to do is figure out when is a user speaking, at what volume level do we read it and indicate that a user is talking, and when do we indicate that a user is not talking. So technically, if I remain quiet, there's still going to be outside noise that won't necessarily be heard, but will still be picked up. So if I go completely silent for about 3 seconds here, so we're lingering at about 40 to 30. That's the volume level if you're watching this here. And then anything above, I would say 50, kind of indicates that I'm talking. So really, you have to figure out that interval and how it's going to read your audio and then set it for yourself. Now, there's different ways of doing it. And what I'm going to do is say anything over 50 indicates that I'm speaking. So you really have to customize this. I know one way is to basically do what I just said and read anything over 50 as an active speaker. And other ways of implementing this is basically just to get the loudest speaker in the room and only highlight that user. But personally, I feel like every user should be highlighted who's talking. So let's go ahead and do this. So what we're going to do is run a check here when we're going to get that currently active speaking user. And remember, we have access to their ID. So I can actually just go ahead and get their UID, and we'll just do the actual user. So we'll just do volume .uid. So we're going to use this UID parameter to figure out what user is talking and then highlight that specific user. So we'll enter again. Okay, for some reason the UID is undefined, and that's because it took volumes again. So I made that mistake twice already, and we'll just enter. So we see user 1608 is at the volume level of, whatever that is in each reading. It's too fast for me to go with it. So we see the user. So let's go ahead and actually highlight this user now. So what I'll do here is I'm going to add in a quick check here. So in this for each loop, what we're going to do is we're going to check every single user, and we're just going to go ahead and query, first of all, the user's wrapper here. So we're just going to go ahead and do document.get element by ID. And this is kind of like that quick implementation. If you want to add your own warning errors or security checks here, you can do that. Or at least better error handling, that's what I meant to say. You can add that in. I'm just going to go ahead and query the user wrapper and then update it. So we're just going to stick to that. So at this point, if I look at each user's wrapper, we have user, and then I have the RTC UID. So we're just going to grab it by the class and not the ID, and I'll explain later why we're not using the ID. We're just going to grab this user class here. So let's go ahead and do that. And we'll bring this down here. We'll just do get elements by class, and let's just go ahead and try to grab this user. So we have user and then the RTC UID, which at this point is going to be the volume UID, and we're just going to grab that element, and we want to get the first index. So there should only be one of these users inside of our application. So we're just getting that first one, so we get an actual object and not an HTML collection. And we're just going to check the volume level. So we're just going to go ahead and check a condition, and we're going to say if volume.level, and it keeps doing volumes. So volume.level, let's type this out a little slower. If this is greater than or equal to 50, again, you're going to need to figure out what works for you and set this. If the user's volume level is equal to 50 or over, what I want to do is go ahead and get the item, and then we'll just do .style, and we'll just set the border color. And I have a hex here that indicates a certain level of green that I like, and I'll just bring this in, and that's going to be a green color. So if the user level is over 50, we'll just set it to that. Else, then what we're going to do is just go ahead and do the same here, and we're going to set the user color back to white. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and put it here. If for some reason we can't query that user ID, we'll see if there's an error, and let's just go ahead and test this out. So when I join a room, it's highlighting it. So as I'm talking, it's highlighting it. As I stop talking, and I'll just zoom in, it's going to go back to white. Perfect. And that's working. So that's exactly what we wanted. So what I could do is just add in a try catch. For some reason, if this isn't working, I can probably just remove this. So I'll just comment out that console, and we'll just do try, make sure that we don't have an error. Maybe the user volume reader starts working before the element gets loaded to the DOM. For whatever reason, I'm just going to go ahead and put in a try catch here. So we'll just do catch error, and for now I'm just going to do nothing. So we'll just put in a comment there, and we'll just say put your error here. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and check it. Let's go ahead and test this out. We'll enter a room. Okay, and we're all set, and that's it for the volume indicator video. So now we know who the active speaker is. It's working how we want it. You can customize that. Again, one way of doing that is simply just to find the loudest volume in the room and read that indicator and highlight that user. So I'll leave that up to you. Maybe I'll make a video on specifically implementing that method later.